Let me introduce Mano. As we were saying, when Operasi Lalang began, she was, together with some others, she was the next generation of leaders who actually ran Sahabat Wanita when the rest of us were detained. So she's technically our second generation of Sahabat Wanita leaders. She also has many experiences herself as a worker in the private hospital. Then she worked with the communities as kindergarten teacher and supervisor of the kindergartens. She had a lot of experiences also with the men in the community. And then she did a lot of work as well with the women in the plantations, especially in Perak, I think. And then she has many other experiences that she will share with you.
That makes me very old. I think when I joined Sahabat Wanita, I think it changed my whole life, like, the way I saw the world, or the happenings in the world. Because initially my whole idea was, as a human being, I want to do service, service somewhere, either join the police or join the hospital, because I was working in the factory before I actually went to do nursing. And then when I was working in Asunta Hospital, I think that's when I met Deva, Grace, Tracy, all these people who were already involved in union. And then when they asked me to join the union, for me the union was fighting for better pay, that's all I saw. And I remember that time we didn't even have shoes, the hospital wouldn't even give us shoes. So all of the union said, okay, from tomorrow we all have to use the clocks to work, so we wore the Chinese clocks and clock in the whole hospital, to fight for shoes, then I see that, and we got the shoes, so that was like an eye-opening that something is happening. That is when Deva told me, I belong to a women's organization, would you like to come and be part of it? And then she mentioned about this kindergartens in the squatter areas, would you like to come there, we're looking for somebody, At that time I didn't know it was a trap, but so I fell into the trap. But then I thought about it and I said, why am I serving the rich in this hospital? It is best for me to go to the community, go to the squatter areas and do some service for the children there. So that's how I got into Sahabat Wanita, and I went to the squatter areas. And I can see there that when we put up, even working with the children and with the mothers in the community, the men were very against it, like Sebastian was saying, we are a team, like we go in, and they were not very happy that women came to know things, women would even bring letters to read for their, their children's school, and then when we talked to them about their children's education, even if we went to houses to collect names of children that we want to register for the following year into kindergarten, the women will say, I have to first seek the advice of my husband, I have to get consent from my husband. Even though they have a useless husband who is not going to work, who is just sitting at home, but still like he is the head of the home. That's where I learned about so much of the issues around violence against women and the women's position in the home and the children. So from there then I also went to do the electronic workers. I remember that one big issue that I was involved in is working with the electronic workers where women were dying of cancer. Remember we went to Texas Instrument, we were involved in this factory, and I think when I went to identify, there was one woman who was dying of cancer when she was working in this particular this particular unit department in the factory, and from her through her friends and all that, we identified I think about easily about 6 women who have died before her, and so we were looking into this occupational health and safety, and we're trying to bring it to seek safety at the workplace. I think there was one big involvement that I remember, you know. And also I think as I went along working with the community, even when the estate that we went, you remember that estate that had own helipad or something that Ladang what, something in Perak, Janrata, you know. The management is so rich, and yet the workers are living in like that's where the estate is like their toilet sits on the you know, that stream that Perak River Estate. So when we go in to see conditions like that, and I remember there was one session where we were having a session with the women workers in the plantation. There was one old grandmother, you know, she is easily about 90 years old, I think, you know. She couldn't even like really see, you know, her eyes. But she is telling, so when here we are speaking that, you know, as a worker in the estate, you are working with so much of pesticides and you know, the dangers of working. And she is sitting in that corner and she's listening, and she is responding, you know, and she's saying, yeah, you know, you must do something about this. You must not just let it go, you know. And that really struck me, you know, like this woman who is not even like actively sitting in this group, that sitting in that corner, that, you know, the experiences that she may have gone through, she is relating, you know, and she is saying that you all should do something about it. No, in fact, people were that laughing, like, you know, who is she suddenly like saying, you know, adding on to the discussion. But I thought that was so powerful, you know. That means during her time, maybe she was not able to do, or there were no people coming to give support like that. No, so I think along the way, then I learned that you know, things are just more than just services. You know, there is injustice that that's happening in societies, and that's where I actually also got my political realization. In fact, when I was doing the working in the kindergarten, that was the time during the you know, the IAC, the arrest, and actually the SB, I only remember I was called in, but I don't know whether Grace or anybody else went to be questioned by the SB. And this is what he told me, you know, do you know that this organization is actually hiding behind all this community work that they do, you know. Their actual intention is not just running some kindergartens for some poor people. It's a very dangerous organization that you're part of, you know. Then I said, oh, I really don't know anything. I just go to the kindergarten, I teach and I come back. I don't know. So he said, if you have any information, it is best you give it to us, you know. That's why when, like Tracy said, you know, when we come back, we were really panicking, because we didn't know the bigger picture of why all this has suddenly happened. And we were thinking, what do we do with all the political books? You know, remember we had so many political books, you know. What do we do with all these books? Shall we take it to the kindergarten and burn it, you know? Shall we take it to a river and dump it, you know? And I remember we went to see Siti No, you know, our friend, and told her, and she said, no, don't, you know, throw all those books were collected over the years. Just dig a hole and bury it so that we can take it out later, you know. So we were like Tracy was saying, we were really in fear during that time, you know. And we had no money also, you know. The money was frozen, you know. And yeah, but the few of us kept the organization going, though we were very afraid. But I think that and like Tracy said, we went to the support group, to the ISA support group. And when Siva Rasa and the support group is there, and they were not happy to see us. They were like, you know, this organization is like, you know, it's not like they saw us as a different kind of organization. Because I think of the bigger political involvement that we had. We organized this program, I think it is in conjunction with the International Women's Day also, I think. And so we put up this play on women's rights, and then we talked about domestic violence and all that. And that's where the men came, always standing at the back to see what is happening, you know. And then one man, he was drunk, and we know he's a known abuser in the community, you know. He's always beating his wife, and people are aware. So when we did that domestic violence scene, he came right to the front and say, "Let me play that role. I can do it better." Then we were shocked. We didn't know how to respond to him. So these are like very direct. I mean, it is very clear the men in the community felt very threatened with women coming in to work. To work with the women there, because the women workers, like Sebastian said, many of the women who worked at the factories in Sungaiwi lived in these communities, So that was one way of like, while we are giving education to their children, it is also a strategy to reach out to the women in the community. So then they know us, then it is easier for us to organize them. So, so the men also questioned what is the real role of this organization, to come in here to give education to the children, or to go beyond that, or to break the families up, So that constant struggle fight was there. I remember the Domestic Violence Act is where we brought a lot of the, I think the strength that Sahabat Wanita brought into that whole law is to when you are writing up a law that concerns women, and this is on a Domestic Violence Act, it is good to see whether whatever is put into the law is relevant to the women on the ground, how does it support the women. So the experiences of women on the ground was brought to the table for discussion, where then when the law was put in place, so it actually supported the women. I think the only one area that we a bit overlook is the one that when a violence in the home happens, we said that we will take the women and children to the safe place, instead of saying that the women should stay in her own home, and it is the perpetrator, the abuser, that should be removed from that place. We actually had, I don't know why, when that time when we were talking about experiences, I also felt personally I could have pushed also for that part, to say why should the woman be removed, because this is her familiar place, and this is her children go to school around there, this is her home, for no mistake of hers, why should she be removed to a safe place and let the perpetrator to stay in his familiar place? It should be the other way around. We should remove the abuser, not the abused. So that only later I realized, but during the discussion, I think a lot of organizations then did not have that strong grassroots support, strong grassroots experiences. So I think that strengthened the Domestic Violence Act. The Women's Agenda for Change, I know that that time, because the women's organizations came together, this is in a little bit of a response to, in my own memory, how I see it is, at that time the National Council of Women's Organization was a little bit on the fence-sitting type of position, where they were, I think they wanted to work with the government. They didn't want to like very much go against the government. But I think the Women's Agenda for Change was not going against the government or anything, but I think their perspective was, they brought all the women's organization together. And what I liked about is about the Women's Agenda for Change was, we looked at all the women's organization in the country, and we looked at where their strength were, So it was like a jigsaw puzzle put together, so we can see who does what, who is best at what, and so together how we can make that change in the country for women at different levels, because women were, some were working for women workers, the others were working for the general population. So the organizations were made up of very many middle class organizations, and there were very few, I think, like the Orang Asli Women's Organization, the Sabah Sarawak, and then I think here it was Sahabat Wanita who was more representing the community women or the women workers, I think.